I got my red button up of rage on, guys, because it's time to count down the top 10 worst movies of 2017. This year has flown by. I can't believe it's already top 10 time. Luckily, it's mostly been an array of pretty good movies. However, when the great movies were really noticeable, so were the really bad movies. That is what I'm here to talk about today. And before I give any disclaimers of any kind, I want to say I don't do this list to call out filmmakers who owe me my money back because their movie didn't entertain me. I do this because a lot of directors who make movies that aren't generally that well received come out and say, oh yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of some of the choice I made on that, or, you know, I'm not really proud of that movie in my career. So I do this to say, yeah, we can laugh about movies now because a lot of the people that worked on the productions of each of these movies will go on to do very successful things in the future, and I know a lot of people in the production of these movies will absolutely do just that. So again, I'm not trying to be mean here. I'm just doing this to celebrate every kind of film. We have a lot of great films, which I'll celebrate tomorrow, and we have some really not great films, which I'll celebrate the qualities of today as well. Now, I want to go into my 3 disclaimers, which is that I saw a lot of movies this year. 83 is a lot of movies. My goal was 75. I saw 83. That's a lot, but I did not see every bad movie to come out this year. 50 Shades Darker, I heard, was really bad, but I didn't see every bad movie, so movies that I missed will not be on this list. That rhymed, which was kind of funny. My second disclaimer to you guys is that this is my subjective list. Not every movie that's going to be on your top 10 worst of the year list is going to be on my top 10 worst of the year list. These are just the movies that I particularly hated and particularly didn't like, so let me know the movies you particularly hated and particularly didn't like in the comment section down below. Thirdly, it's important to note that not every bad movie I saw this year could even make it onto the list. I saw probably 13 or 14 movies that deserve to be on a list of some kind, but I'm sure other critics and other reviewers will have me covered on those. So just know that there were some movies this year that I thought in any other year would absolutely make a top 10 worst of the year list. This year they just narrowly avoided it though. So remember, again, 3 disclaimers. Remember, I'm not doing this to rain on anyone's parade. I'm just doing this to, again, celebrate film and celebrate what a year it has been in film. That being said, let's roast some bad movies. Starting it off with number 10. Coming in at number 10, we have got the movie that stuck with me since June of this year, Cars 3. Pixar stands for an initiative of originality, of creativity, of promoting new ideas, and Cars 3 was none of those. It was a lazy rehash of all the other animated movies we've seen before. It was the same annoying Lightning McQueen and Mater with the cable guy type of humor that I didn't like at all. It felt boring, it felt dull, and it felt like something that Pixar should not be proud of going forward. I love a ton of other Pixar movies, but Cars, they're just the weak link, man, or the weak motor. Car pun. Coming in at number 9, we've got, ironically, the only movie I gave an F to all year, and that's Wish Upon. Complete failure of a horror movie, and we had a few other bad horror movies in 2017. Wish Upon is one of those that just had a lot of bad acting, a horrible twist at the end, a predictable plot that could have been really good if it was well executed, but a lot of the dialogue was kind of cringy, and you just felt like it was kind of tween BS that you're like, no, please stop. Coming in at number 8 is a completely different kind of BS, a storm of BS, a Geostorm, that is. Geostorm is one of those movies that was trying to be so huge and so epic because it had complex characters, it had really cool action, it had an awesome subplot, but no, it didn't. It actually just had characters that felt like they were one-dimensional because the actors weren't really putting in all that much effort. Gerard Butler was laughable as an astronaut in this whole thing. It had action that looked like it was completely redone in post-production and wasn't actually done all that well. Apparently the movie was reshot or some crazy amount of it was, so I completely believe that's why the action wasn't that great. And the kind of subplots were kidnapping the president, and there's kind of an evil villain here, and yeah, it was a storm of something, alright. Coming in at number 7, Cars 3 wasn't the worst animated movie I saw this year. That was the Emoji Movie. Poop humor, fart humor, gross humor the entire time. I'm like, kids are not gonna like this if they're below the age of 3. Maybe kids 3 to 10 will like it because they don't realize it's actually that bad, but the product placement of this whole thing took me out and made me realize, yeah, this entire thing was only made because Pandora and Dropbox and Candy Crush all wanted to have their names in a movie someplace, and a movie about your iPhone is the perfect place to have it in there. So who cares if we have characters that are actually well developed or a storyline that makes sense at all? Let's just throw all these brands in the movie and it'll totally make sense, right? Wrong. Moving on to number 6, we have another bad horror movie, and that is Friend Request. It was kind of the worst version of Rings, which also came out in 2017, where it was trying to be this investigation, like, oh, the girl sent me a friend request, but now she's getting evil because the friend request might actually kill her or something like that, and you're like, I don't think any of this makes sense. We could have had a really cool commentary about how social media is taking over our lives, but no, instead we just have predictable scares, characters that feel like they're kind of D-bags, and ultimately a plot that kind of falls through the window, if you ask me. A twist at the end that was just so stupid, and I thought ultimately did a disservice to the movie in general. Up until the end, I'm like, oh yeah, this is it's not good, but at the end, I'm like, nope, this is actually just horrible. And speaking of horrible, coming in at number 5, we've got, ironically enough, Transformers 5, The Last Night. The Arthur subplot, the King Arthur mythology type thing, I'm like, this could be kind of interesting. Oh wait, no, the storyline feels so messy, I can't get into it whatsoever. Ultimately, what happened in this movie is Michael Bay saw 2 different ideas for a Transformers movie. He saw there was a Mark Wahlberg kind of saving the city type of Transformers movie, and he saw there was a King Arthur type of Transformers movie set in the olden days, and he decided to combine them together into an amalgamation of nonsense. You're like, Michael Bay, you can't do that. You can't just combine 2 separate things and assume it'll make sense, because when you have a little girl teaming up with Mark Wahlberg at the beginning of the movie, then she disappears until the very end of the movie, you're gonna say, wait a second, that isn't how movies work. That's not how narrative is focused. It's just, and then boom, 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 explosions. That's supposed to make up for it. And you're like, no, that again is just what a lazy filmmaker who doesn't know what they're doing would do. It feels like it's forced, and it feels like it's nonsense, and it feels like it's bad filmmaking, and it feels like it's one of the worst movies of the year. Speaking of worst movies of the year, and speaking of bad sequels, coming in at number 4, we got Daddy's Home 2. This is the classic case of trading up an original movie that actually had some good characters, some charm, and some sweetness to it, for a movie that had crude humor and dirty jokes, and ultimately not much going for it whatsoever. The structure of this movie was completely in the toilet, ironically enough, because there was a lot of toilet and potty humor in this film, but ultimately what was wrong with it is the structure was that each scene was an individual setup for a joke, and then that joke didn't land, and then you'd move on to another isolated scene with a joke that wouldn't land, and then you'd move on to another isolated scene of a joke that wouldn't land, and you'd be like, wait a second, so we're supposed to believe that Mel Gibson and John Lithgow are these likable characters, but Mel Gibson's literally just swearing at his son and trying to get laughs out of the audience, so we're not supposed to like him, but you're trying to make him seem to be a likable character, so you're not telling a good story here. And did that girl just shoot her grandfather with a real gun? Oh my god, this isn't funny. This is Important to note, though, not the worst movie of the year. Coming in at number 3, we got The Mummy, the worst movie of the summer, if you ask me. The Mummy is the key example of what happens when a studio tries to be way too ambitious, pumping out a franchise. There was supposed to be like, oh, you got The Mummy, then you got Frankenstein, then you got Dracula, then you got Creature from the Black Lagoon, and they're gonna all team up into a big crossover movie where Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is the villain. And then it's like, no, this movie's just being really careless in its setup. The first scene of this movie, I swear to God, immediately made me think, this is one of the worst scenes I've honestly witnessed all year, where Tom Cruise literally turns to the guy from New Girl and he's like, can't be that hard to break into Iraq, right? The 2 of them slide down a corridor, guns are shooting at them like AK-47 rifles and stuff, and they completely miss all the crossfire, and I'm like, this wouldn't happen in real life. In fact, this actually feels like it's completely detached from reality whatsoever. You feel like the entire thing, again, is trying to set up for a huge franchise of humor, of action, of horror, and you're like, why don't you pick one of those genres and we can do one of those? When you're trying to do all 3, it just becomes a garbled mess of nothingness that you feel like is being way too forced by a director who's never directed before, which shows, by the way, and a bunch of writers that were like, we don't know what we want with this movie, so let's just put it out, hope people will see it, and make another one for another couple bucks. And apparently they're not going to make another one because, again, this thing tanked so bad and was honestly such a poorly done film. Still not done, though. At number 2, we got Ghost in the Shell. I remember showing up to see this movie on a Saturday morning at the beginning of April, and the guy who gave me a ticket said, I saw it last night, and it was great. And I'm like, that's awesome, man. So I walk in the movie, I sit down, and I'm like, what movie did he watch? This is abysmal. I felt like Scarlett Johansson was completely wooden in the movie. She's one of my favorite actresses in Hollywood right now, but I felt like she had no idea what to do because she didn't know what the storyline was, and neither did the audience, to be honest. I'm not familiar with the anime. I've been told the anime is great, but having no prior knowledge of the anime, I watched the movie and I'm like, yeah, so I think she's trying to work for this guy. Oh wait, no, she's now working against that guy. Is she double crossing somebody? What's going? She's not a human. She's a so she's trying to do the entire thing was bafflingly confusing with bafflingly bad effects and bafflingly bad action sequences, to be honest with you. The entire thing felt like it was such a drag that I could not get through, and by the end of it I'm like, thank God that is over. I feel bad for that ticket concessions guy if you actually like this thing, but all film is subjective. Speaking of subjectivity, I'm sure somebody enjoyed my number 1 worst movie of the year, but not me, clearly. I thought about this movie all year, and I know they say don't think it, and I had to tell people all year how bad it was, and I know they say don't say it. Don't think it, don't say it. It's The Bye-Bye Man, and I'm sure a lot of you are like, what is that? Or, man, I completely forgot about the movie. Well, I envy you, because I have been thinking about this thing since January of 2017. It was the first movie I saw all year, and it was the dumbest movie I saw all year. If you say the guy's name the bye-bye man. He shows up and he kills you. Or actually, no, he doesn't kill you. That's in the lore of it. But what happens is you say his name, and then he shows up and he plays with your mind for a while and does psychological hallucinations, and then he kills you. It's like, wait, that doesn't make any sense. Why don't you just say his name and then he shows up and kills you? Because that wouldn't give us a movie to make. Well, this writing kind of is stupid. It kind of falls apart if that's the premise of the movie. Shut up. We don't want our audience to think about it too much. This is geared at dumb teenagers. And that's exactly what happens in the movie. You've got dumb college students who find the name and then lead to horrible horror movie setup shenanigans that ultimately climaxes in not that interesting of a climax of the movie. This could be a premise that SNL honestly spoofs. Like, if you say his name, he shows up and he hallucinates and like plays with your mind and everything. And I'm like, yeah, this really is a thing where from the get-go I felt like it was a no-win situation with bad actors, bad directing, and just bad production design in general. Again, it felt like it was a student film made by like a freshman in grade school who wrote the script in crayon and ultimately had his dog direct it, but the dog was never on set, neither was he, and basically everybody was trying to figure out what was going on the entire time. I was trying to figure out what was going on the entire movie, and I was completely lost. And that is it. It is over. Those are my top 10 worst movies of 2017. There were some stinkers this year that did not even make my list, though. Let me know what you guys thought those stinkers were in the comment section down below. Also, be sure to stay tuned to my channel tomorrow for my top 10 best movies of 2017. Even more difficult list to make than this one was. We had a lot of great movies this year, and I can't wait to talk about all of those. In the meantime, go over to mymoviethoughts.com, subscribe to this YouTube channel, and follow me on Twitter at JohnMHayeck to stay up to date with everything I am doing. Links to all three of those are in the description down below. You guys know, so like this video, comment on it, share it with some friends. I am John Hayeck, and as always, thank you guys so much for watching.